There's something you keep thinking about. A project, an idea, a version of your life you haven't started yet. You tell yourself you will, soon, when you're ready, when the timing feels right. But you don't begin. Not really. And the strange part is, you want to. So why is it the things that matter most are the ones you keep avoiding? Problem deep dive. It doesn't look like fear. It looks like delay. You plan it out in your head. You imagine how it could go. Sometimes you even get close. You open the document. You sketch the idea. You take a small step. But then something pulls you away. You check something else. You tell yourself you'll come back later. And later doesn't happen. Not because you forgot, but because something about starting feels heavier than it should. Over time, this builds tension. You think about it often. It stays in the background of your mind, a quiet pressure. Because you know this isn't something you don't care about, it's something you care about too much, and that's what makes it confusing. If it matters, why avoid it? Why does something meaningful feel so hard to begin? The answer isn't about discipline, it's about something deeper. Something that only shows up when the stakes are personal. Reframe. You're not avoiding the task, you're avoiding what the task might reveal. Because starting something you care about isn't neutral. It's exposing. It turns an idea into something real, and once it's real, it can be evaluated, not just by others, but by you. So the hesitation you feel isn't laziness, it's protection. Your brain is trying to avoid a specific possibility, that once you start, you might not be as capable as you hoped. And that possibility feels threatening, not to your plans, but to your identity. But how does your brain turn a simple action into something that feels like a risk to who you are? Psychological mechanism. To understand this, you need to look at how your brain connects effort to identity. When something matters to you, it becomes part of how you see yourself, not externally, internally. I'm someone who could do this. I have potential here. This is something I'm meant for. These beliefs are subtle but powerful. They create what psychology calls an identity-based expectation. Now here's where the brain gets cautious. Before you start, your brain runs a prediction. If I try this, what does it say about me? If the outcome is positive, it reinforces your identity. But if the outcome is negative, it challenges it. And that's where the threat appears, because your brain doesn't just simulate failure, it simulates what failure means. This involves the default mode network, which is responsible for self-referential thinking. It connects actions to identity. At the same time, the amygdala evaluates emotional risk. So when you think about starting, your brain isn't just asking, will this work? It's asking, what if this proves something about me that I don't want to see? Here's the mental model. Imagine your potential as a sealed box. As long as you don't open it, it can be anything, unlimited, undefined. But the moment you open it, you open the box, and whatever's inside becomes real, clear, limited. So your brain hesitates, not because it doubts you completely, but because uncertainty feels safer than a defined outcome. Because once something is defined, it can no longer stay ideal. And that's what you're protecting. Not your time, not your energy, but your idea of yourself. Practical framework. You don't overcome this by forcing yourself to start. You change how your brain interprets what starting means. 1. Separate effort from identity. Right now, your brain links performance directly to who you are. What to do? Remind yourself, this is an action, not a definition. Why it works. This reduces identity threat in the default mode network. Your brain becomes less defensive when outcomes aren't tied to self-worth. Real-life example. Instead of thinking, if this doesn't go well, I'm not capable, you think, this is one attempt, not a final judgment. The pressure decreases. 2. Lower the meaning of the first step. The first step feels heavy because your brain attaches too much importance to it. What to do? Redefine the first action as something insignificant. Not impressive, not meaningful, just movement. Why it works. This reduces emotional intensity and bypasses avoidance triggered by high stakes. Real-life example. Instead of start the project, your task becomes open the file and write one sentence. That's it. 3. Expect imperfection early and allow it. Your brain wants early results to match your internal expectations, but they rarely do. What to do? Assume the first version will be incomplete, even flawed. Why it works. This aligns expectation with reality, reducing cognitive dissonance. Your brain stops treating imperfection as failure. Real-life example. You begin writing something important. It doesn't feel right. Instead of stopping, you continue knowing this is part of the process. 4. Shift focus from outcome to exposure. Right now, you're trying to succeed, but that's not the first step. The first step is exposure. What to do? Focus on showing up to the task, not completing it. Why it works. This reduces performance pressure and activates behavioral momentum. The brain responds better to action than to evaluation. Real-life example. You sit down to work for 10 minutes, not to finish, just to begin. And often, that's enough to continue. 5. Build familiarity with doing, not thinking. Avoidance keeps you in your head, but action shifts processing. What to do? Short, repeated sessions of starting without overthinking. Why it works. This strengthens action-based neural pathways and reduces reliance on predictive thinking. Your brain becomes more comfortable with uncertainty. Real-life example. You start for 5 to 10 minutes each day. No pressure to produce something perfect, just consistent engagement. Over time, resistance decreases. Integration. At its core, this isn't about starting. It's about what starting represents. To your brain, starting means exposure, evaluation, definition. And that feels risky. So it delays. Not because you don't care, but because you do. And once you see that, the pattern changes. You stop asking, why am I avoiding this? And start asking, what part of myself am I trying to protect? That question shifts everything. Because now the resistance makes sense. And when something makes sense, it becomes easier to move through. Quiet, empowering close. You don't need to feel ready to begin. You don't need certainty. Because readiness often comes after you start, not before. And maybe that's the quiet truth. The version of you that can do this doesn't appear first. It forms through the process, through imperfect attempts, through small steps, through showing up when it feels unclear. So the question isn't, are you capable? It's, are you willing to see what happens when you stop protecting the idea and start discovering the reality? Because what's inside that box was never meant to stay closed.